Ancient parents sold their own kids on purpose. Not kidnapped, not stolen. Sold by their own family. This wasn't rare. For most of human history, it was normal. So why would loving parents do this? And the answer says a lot about how fragile ancient life really was. Meet Kel, a farmer in Mesopotamia 3,700 years ago. His crops failed 2 years in a row, so he borrowed grain to survive the winter. But in the ancient world, a loan was never just a loan. If Kel couldn't repay it, the debt didn't just vanish. It could be paid off with a person instead of money. And this was called debt pawning. And children were the most common payment. Not forever, usually, just until the debt was worked off. The child would work off dad's debt through labor. And sound harsh. To ancient families, it was actually a safety net. It meant the Amohal family didn't starve to death. This wasn't a Mesopotamia-only thing either. And Rome had a version too, and it was even more extreme. Meet Marcus. Under Roman law, he legally owned his own children. The law was called patria potestas, total power of the father, and that power legally included selling his kids into labor. Roman fathers could do it up to 3 times. After that, by law, the father lost his power over that child. Why so specific? And Rome wanted to stop total abuse of the system, so even the harshest systems had built-in limits. Now here's where it gets less brutal and more surprising. Meet Eric, a Norse foster father around 900 AD. And in Norse culture, sending your kid away was seen as generous. Families would trade children to build alliances between clans. The higher status family, the bigger the honor for the child's parents. And this wasn't abandonment. It was a career move for a toddler. Back in the ancient Near East, apprenticeships worked a similar way. Parents would place children with a master craftsman to learn a trade, and a contract carved in clay sealed the deal for years. In exchange, the child got food, shelter, and a real skill. A skill meant they'd never go hungry as an adult, but not every version of this was gentle. And in famines, some children were sold outright permanently. Ancient records call it plainly sold for silver, never to return. That's the part that stings, because it really did happen. And so which was it? Survival strategy or exploitation? The honest answer, it depended entirely on who was selling. Kings even had to step in and set limits on the practice. And one of the oldest law codes in history capped it at 3 years. After that, the child legally had to go home. No exceptions. So even 3,700 years ago, there were rules against abuse. And compare that to true slavery, where none of these limits applied. That distinction mattered enormously to the people living it. Pawned kids kept their names, their families, their identity. And they could inherit, they could marry, they could go home. Back to Kel and Beru, the debt finally came due. Beru would go live and work in the lender's house. Ninshu held it together, and she knew this was temporary. For 2 harvest seasons, Beru ground grain and hauled water. Meanwhile, Kel rebuilt what the drought had taken. And then Kel finally repaid the debt in full, and the tablet was broken. The contract was over. Beru walked home, for good this time. This is the part most people don't expect. Most sold children in history were never sold forever, and it was closer to an ancient emergency loan than modern trafficking. That doesn't make it painless. It made it survivable. In a world with no banks, no insurance, no government safety net, and a child was sometimes the only thing worth enough to trade. That's not a story about cruelty. It's a story about desperation, and it explains why these systems had rules, limits, and expiration dates. And ancient people weren't monsters. They were surviving a world without a net. The real twist: some of these systems eventually became foster care, adoption, apprenticeship, guardianship, and all trace back to this. The systems we have today didn't come from nowhere. They were built out of the exact desperation you just watched. So next time someone says ancient life was simple, or remember Kel, Ninshu, and Beru. Every normal thing today was once someone's desperate solution. What's a normal thing today you think future people will find shocking? And drop your guess. I read everyone. There's a lot more history like this worth digging into. Stick around, this one's just the beginning.